I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that it is 12 o'clock and we have a few other people probably coming in late, but that's fine. I wanted to go ahead and also start recording today's session. So welcome everyone and welcome to today's workshop preview of the new Blackboard inline assignment grading feature. My name is Jeff Geronimo and I am the e-learning design coordinator with the Faculty Development and Instructional Design Center here at Northern Illinois University. So today's workshop is really going to be focusing on the new inline grading feature, and this is something that is not yet available on the current platform that we're all logging into now on a regular basis, but this is something that's going to be included as part of our new service pack upgrade. As I'm sure you've all been aware of at some point, this upgrade is slated to be taking place in June next month. So one of the new features is the inline grading feature. And today what we're really going to do is just take a look a little bit more about what this particular feature is all about. And we're going to highlight some of the general use cases and scenarios of how to actually use the feature, as well as diving a little bit deeper into some of the more specific features that make this tool really, really nice. And so it's always important when new different technologies come out that we find a way to start being comfortable with it. But I find that the learning curve for this new built-in feature is actually a really low level. So it's not going to take much time for us to get acclimated to this feature. And then towards the middle of the session, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go and demonstrate exactly how the inline grading feature works with some sample student submissions. And at the very end, if you have any questions, you can, of course, feel free to let me know. And so that's what we're really going to be covering today in today's agenda. Now, so let's start a little bit more. Let's talk about the previous workflow with how grading assignments typically worked. And this would be the case as it is now in our current version of Blackboard that everyone is using. So if you are taking advantage of electronic assignment submissions for students, so if you allowed students to turn in work through Blackboard, you must have obviously created an assignment, and you would usually, as a faculty member, would come into this page and you would see then that for each student you would have information regarding their recent submission. So for this particular student, she had actually submitted a paper through a specific assignment, and you'll notice that we have here some files that she had submitted. So she actually submitted 3 different files for me as a faculty member to view and grade. She didn't leave any comments, as you might see here in the little section, otherwise it would show. And I would essentially have an area here to grade that current attempt. So the previous workflow, or I guess the current workflow right now, is you would normally download each of these files, and I know many faculty members have different ways of handling these files. They might actually go from student to student to student and download each file, review the file, probably put in some annotations, any grades, markups, and then they would save that file and upload it back to Blackboard, back to this current screen. And generally, if you did practice that, you may have probably used this attached file area here. This is the grade current attempt area, so you would not only provide a grade to the student or any feedback, but if you did actually make any marks or corrected the actual submission, whether it was a Microsoft Word document, for instance, you would then upload that file back for the student. So the student would see the actual grade, any feedback that you left for the user, as well as the corrected file. And that's been a standard convention. Most faculty members, I find, would either take advantage of all 3 of those options. Otherwise, they might just put a grade and provide general feedback to the user. So that was always the previous workflow, and obviously many of us have different ways of going around through it. If you've taken a closer look at the screen, this was actually, I went into the needs grading area. So if any of you ever take advantage of the needs grading area, it's a wonderful subset of the grading center, the full grade center. So you can go into this page to see what's been submitted currently by students that still need your grading attention. So I'm actually in the needs grading area, but for most of us, I know we would probably go into the full grade center as well. If you have a large class, you might actually take advantage of the download file. So rather than going through each student individually, you would probably just download all of the student work in one zip file and just grade from there. So that's always been the previous workflow, and I am happy to let you know that going forward, the workflow for downloading assignments is always going to be the same, but now with the new integration of this inline grading, it's going to just change, and it'll innovate different ways of thinking about how to actually grade within Blackboard. So taking a look at this previous workflow, now we come into the new workflow that will be available as of next month in June. So what is this inline grading feature that, there's always been a lot of hype about this ever since some of the notes have been going around about Blackboard. But with this inline grading feature, one of the most fun things about this is that you can now view, comment, and grade the student submitted assignment files without ever leaving the grade assignment page. So when you view a document submitted in an assignment, that document is automatically converted to a special format that's viewable directly inside the web browser. So you can see here that the grade assignment page has been revamped. So we no longer have those different sections of different areas within the Grade Center. Now we actually have three different, or actually I would say two different panes here. And the student submitted work would appear right here on the left-hand side. So rather than having to download each assignment, you would then be able to just go in naturally and view the document without having to download, without having to open up the file. And then you'll actually also be able to provide annotations and markups as well as any comments. So the features from the previous workflow are still available, but the interface itself has been revamped slightly so that it would make room for these new specific features. So now specifically in terms of what you could, what you can't do, there are a couple things to note. When students are submitting work, we do need to make sure, I want to point out that for the supported document types, students can still submit various document types, but to ensure that the inline grading actually process the documents, you want to make sure that the students either submit a Word document, a PowerPoint, Excel, and or a PDF. If, for instance, students submit anything else in a different format, you'll still be able to download that, but you won't actually be able to view it within the browser. So that's something that I wanted to point out. And by Word document, I'm referring to the ones that end in the .doc, .docx extensions, just your general Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and PDF. So what happens is the converted document is just displayed in the viewer on the grade assignment page, this current page that you're viewing now. And you'll also be happy to know that any formatting and any embedded images of the original document are preserved in the conversion. So whatever the student submitted, you'll see the exact same submission. You won't have to download it and verify that it looks the way it does on the screen. And as I mentioned, if the student did submit a file that isn't in any one of these 3 or 4 formats, then you'll still see the files to download, but you just won't see it in the viewer. And I also wanted to point out, too, that the assignment submissions that are created with the content editor and SafeAssign are not compatible. So if, for instance, let me talk about SafeAssign here for a second. If you make use of SafeAssign regularly for plagiarism detection purposes, if you have students submit work to SafeAssign, and you'll, of course, still be able to see those documents, and it will be sent to the originality server, and it will still check against any plagiarized papers that are out there, but you will not be able to actually view the document in line as you would see here. So if you would like that option, you just make sure that you create a regular assignment. I believe from what I hear in Blackboard's world, there will be some type of future support for SafeAssign, but at this point, with this feature still being brand new, SafeAssign is not compatible. And then the other thing here is the content editor. So if you notice when you submit assignments, students can submit files, or they can simply type in a response. So this might be a short paragraph. You might ask them, just rather than submitting a Word document, I would just want you to go in and type in a few paragraphs about so-and-so. And so if you do have students who submit basically just text responses rather than uploading files, those responses will still be shown in the viewer, but you won't actually have any of the annotation capabilities. You won't be able to mark up, and you'll see all of these features as we move forward here in this presentation. But I just want to let everyone know that for you to take advantage of this feature, just make sure that students are submitting actual files that are in one of these 4 formats. I did have a faculty member last month in one of my face-to-face workshops who did ask me about this, and they had told me that in their class they used Microsoft Excel files. And he wanted to know if the formulas that are embedded in Excel files are viewable, or somehow if you can manipulate them in the inline grading. And my response to that was, yes, you can see the Excel files, but if, let's say, you wanted to grade a student's Excel file based on correct formulas that might be embedded within that document, you will not be able to see it with the inline grading. Just remember that with the inline grading, whatever you can see on the document is what will be displayed in the viewer. You won't be able to actually manipulate any particular portion. It's almost like a static document, but you can simply paint over it, in a manner of speaking. So just wanted to let everyone know that you can still view these files, but if you are grading any hidden variables or any hidden things that are not visibly shown in there, you won't be able to do that. And in that case, you would just need to download that document. And so hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the chat box, and I'll be happy to address those. Now, a little bit more about the use cases and scenarios, and you can already start thinking about, how you might use this. But using this inline grading feature is really not an extra feature that's available within Blackboard. It's already somehow built and just integrated with the current grading workflow. So the simple answer of when you might use this is really whenever you are using electronic assignment submissions for your students. So if you are using Blackboard to post assignment links so that students can go in and submit their work, you will be able to take advantage of that. One particular thing to note is if, let's say, your class is very heavily writing intensive. I teach English myself, so I tend to have lots of student essays that come in. And if you are someone that actually makes marks within the papers, provides comments, rather than downloading the Word files, in this case it would be a Microsoft Word file, and fiddling with track changes and anything else and having to submit that back to Blackboard, you can just read the essay right within the viewer and highlight and comment as you like. So it really makes handling large number of text possible, so you can really work with those things like student essays. And then, of course, one of the other benefits too is, as I mentioned before, allowing students to submit work in a variety of formats. So if you wanted to work with presentations or Excel files, but you didn't necessarily like the idea of having to try to comment directly within the file, this new feature that's integrated within the Grade Center really now allows you to be able to accept a variety of formats, knowing that you can view those in line and provide markups and annotations. If you also remember, Blackboard does have an interactive rubrics feature built into the grading workflow. Not many faculty tend to use it, but we have some who do, and that really does allow you to do an interactive point, click, and score method. So if you do use interactive rubrics, I want to let you know that you can use this in conjunction with the inline grading, so you can not only provide the annotations that inline grading provides, but you can also grade using the interactive rubric. But this is, of course, a separate topic. If this is something that you're interested in and you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, we actually have tutorials. I did deliver an online workshop on this a few months ago that you can find there in the archive in case you're interested in learning more about the rubrics feature. It's a wonderful feature. And one of the other things, too, that I wanted to point out is after you make these marks and annotations on the document, in this case as a faculty member, once you make those marks on student work, you can actually download and save that annotated version either for your purpose. For a student could do that simply for her benefit of being able to save her work, and if for any reason she has any questions, she could even print it out and show it to you. And I can show you exactly how this actually works once we get into a little bit more of the demonstration. So let's go ahead and take a look now at, again, the same screen that I showed you before. There are two major panes in this new workflow, but there are 3 areas of special interest that I did want to point out. So again, this is a screenshot from one of the previous screens showing this is a student submitted work. It's a Microsoft Word document that she had submitted. And as a faculty member, this is my perspective and my grading view. So you'll notice here in this section labeled A, this is the area where you can review and comment directly in the document itself. Now, in section B here, this is what's called the Inline Viewer Toolbar, and this is where you can zoom the content of the document. You can zoom in or out. You can also open up the actual annotation tools to comment in the document. That's what these marks are here. And you can also, which is really nice, there's a button here that you can actually, like I mentioned before, you can download the document that you're currently seeing, as well as move from page to page if there are multiple pages. This document, there's only 1 page, so obviously it shows just 1 of 1, but this is essentially the toolbar that you would be working with. And the section C over here is where you can actually provide the grade for that submission once you're done providing any of the inline marks. So from here, you can view the assignment details, the grading rubric if there is one. You can also type an overall grade and grades for each attempt, as well as provide feedback to your students without ever having to leave the page. The only time I mentioned that you would need to spend a little bit more time is if the student did submit an unsupported file, or if, let's say, you really wanted to download a document and view something specifically that you could not see here in this inline view. In my experience, I have worked in different learning management systems, other Blackboard, that use the same feature. And there were some interesting quirks about the system, and so having tried this in Blackboard, I can say that the view here in the inline viewer is, I'm almost going to say, close to 100% accurate to the original document that was submitted. The only time I found in personal experience that it may not be the same is if, let's say, the student has inserted some really extraneous page breaks or weird paragraph markings. So if, for instance, this particular heading of the paper, I might, in the inline viewer, see it all the way at the bottom of page 1, where in reality I would download the documents on page 2. So, but generally speaking, those issues are very, very, very minimal. You would be able to see very clearly if there is an issue with the document, and if you had to actually download the document to see for yourself if there really was an issue. But that's a more of a side note I wanted to point out, just something to think about. Brian, good question. You asked what view might we see for an unsupported file type. What would happen is that you would not see this document in the viewer, but instead you would, in section C, you would see the document here available as a link. So you would just be able to download that document, just like you did in the previous workflow. So if it wasn't supported, if it was not a Word document, a PowerPoint format, Excel, or PDF, it would not actually show up here, I believe. It may just show you a message saying annotations are not available, or this file type is not supported, but that doesn't mean you aren't able to download it. The students can, in theory, download anything. So if I know in other classes, for instance, if a student was in a graphic design course and they had to submit a native Photoshop file, that Photoshop file, which is in a what's called a PSD format, will not actually show inline. Because the inline viewer just won't render that. It will instead make it available here in the submission area, and they can just go ahead and the faculty member can just go ahead and download that. Good question. All right, so now specifically in terms of the inline viewer toolbar, which is the heart of this inline grading feature, where we can provide these markings that you're seeing here, what we're going to do now is just take a closer look at what the actual areas are and what you can actually do within this particular toolbar. So as I mentioned before, you'll always have this toolbar available if there is a supported file. You can zoom out, zoom in. So in my previous workshops, when I gave a very brief preview of this feature, they asked, well, the font's really small. Is there any way I can enlarge that? You can use these zoom in, zoom out function. And this button right here, this comment button, is what toggles the second level annotation toolbar. Otherwise, if you had toggled this comment button off, you would not see this second level that I'm pointing to right now. So let's take a look at the second level here. So what you can do as far as annotation, you can provide actual comments in the margins. You can see here in the ghosted background that there is a comment in the margin in yellow. It's very similar to providing comments in Microsoft Word. You can also freestyle draw, make an actual mark, circle things as you can see in the document behind this. You can also highlight text, and that's what's so nice about this feature is this inline grading viewer actually does render the text very nicely. So the text and the document that you're seeing inline is not just an image. You can actually select the text, which is also good news for those who are concerned about accessibility purposes. If for some reason you needed to have a certain text on the screen read out by a screen reader, those texts are indeed readable. It is not any kind of an image, unless, of course, there is an image embedded within the document. But you can highlight text. You can also add just general text on the document or in the margins if you wanted to do so, as well as providing strikeouts. So if you have some text that's on the student submission and you just wanted to denote that this probably shouldn't have been included in the submission, you can simply highlight the text to strike it out. And most of these tools do allow you the option of actually changing the different colors for the markings. So you could, make one marking for grammar errors, another marking for style errors, and so on and so forth. And as I mentioned before, there is a down arrow button here that once you are done providing these marks, you can download them, and it will save it as a PDF format, so all of the markings are preserved in this format, which is really, really powerful, because then, as I mentioned before, you as a faculty member can save this, or as a student, they can go in and actually save a copy of their work. It's almost as if you were marking on their paper and handing it back to them. It really provides more of a personalized way of getting your assignment back. So I've done all this talking. Now I'm sure most of you are interested in seeing exactly what this looks like and seeing this really in action. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. So if you remember from previous sessions, if you've done Collaborate sessions, there may be a small lag. But what will happen is when I switch over to the app sharing, it'll take a few seconds, but you will see my browser, and we will be going into Blackboard to take a look at how this feature works. So I'll try not to scroll around too much because what tends to happen on the receiving end is you may see some lags and some slowness. So I'll try to minimize that as much as I can. But if you are having issues, just let your browser and your computer do the work for you. It will render in a few moments. So I'm going to go ahead and share the desktop. And you should be seeing in just a few seconds here, I'm going to be making available the Firefox screen. And what we're doing right now, so again, let your computer take a few moments to see this if it's not seeing it. So what we are doing is we're going to take a nice look at exactly how this feature works. And I am in a development server in Blackboard. This is not in our regular Blackboard format. It's not live as of yet. It's still in our development stage. But I'm just here in a sample course, in a guest course. So what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is show you exactly what it might look like on a student's end first. So you'll notice that if I'm going into as a student and I wanted to, for instance, submit a new assignment for grading, I'm logged in here as, ironically enough, as Steve Jobs. And I'm going into my, in this particular course, it's labeled as assessment. So I'm going to go into this course, and I can see now I have a couple of different assignments from which I can choose to submit. And I'm going to go and submit something to this website analysis assignment. Now, I actually already submitted something as a student here, so you'll notice here in the student view, they get to see a view of their actual submission. They will not have any annotation capabilities since that's reserved for the faculty member, but they can take a look and view what they've already previously submitted. But I realize as a student that I messed up on my file submission and I want to submit again. So this is another side note that if you as a faculty member allow them to submit more than once, they will have this button available just as they did in the previous workflow to start a new submission. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new submission, and you'll notice from the student end the interface has changed, but only slightly. So I can see the assignment information. what I need to do for this assignment, and I can, in section 2, also submit this assignment simply by browsing my computer. And you'll notice that in the previous workflow, there was an extra box to type the submission. Notice that it's now collapsed by default. And this is so, I believe it's just been collapsed in this new version since you know, taking a look at previous users, 99% of the time most students do upload files rather than typing in a submission. But if for some reason you were requiring students to type something rather than upload something, you can click that box as a student and type it in. But remember, as I mentioned before, if you do type anything here, as a student, this will be viewed in the grading workflow, but you can't actually, as a faculty member, you will not have the ability to provide any markings or annotations. So just keep that in mind, because generally 99% of the time, students will simply upload files, not type a submission. So I'm just going to go ahead and collapse this again because I'm not going to submit anything. But and I'm going to go ahead and add a file and provide some comments on this paper if I wanted to. And I already previously did this, so no worries about this. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit, and that would actually submit this work. So this is on the student side. From a faculty perspective, I'm here in this other browser as a faculty member in the same exact course. So if you just take a few seconds, your screen will load. I know that I had to open and close the browser here real quick. But we're in the same course, but now as a faculty member. So to go ahead and view that work that I submitted as a student, I'm going to go into the Grade Center on the left-hand side under Course Management. And remember that you have the option to go into the Needs Grading area, and you'll see that as Steve Jobs' student submitted 2 different assignments, 2 specific ones, but I can also go into the full Grading Center as well. Either way, I will be able to access the inline grading workflow. But since I'm here in the Needs Grading, I'm going to go ahead and see what Steve Jobs submitted for this website analysis that I just showed you as a sample. So to go ahead and check this, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Steve Jobs student's name. And in just a few seconds here, the inline grading workflow will appear. If you give your computer, again, a few seconds here for this image to render, you'll now see the same exact window that you probably saw in the student area, but you now have a more robust interface. So as I mentioned before, this is the actual assignment, and funny enough, the sample document you're seeing here is from a doctoral class I submitted, but I just use this as a sample. So this is a document that I had submitted, and you'll notice that this is a Microsoft Word document, and I can see everything here on the viewable pane. I have the toolbar that I mentioned in my presentation a few slides ago. I can zoom in. I can also zoom out if I needed to. And by the way, if this menu bar is distracting, you can always hover over on the side and simply click it, and it will hide that menu so that the screen real estate will enlarge and expand for you. But as I mentioned before too, zoom in, zoom out if I'd like to do so. There are, as you notice, in this document, there's 3 pages, so I can click on this arrow, the up and down arrows, to navigate to the different pages just to view each of the page in the submission. And for those of you that do want to get the hard copy, you'll notice, as Brian mentioned and as I responded, the original document will always be here on the right-hand side, in the right-hand pane. There's the file name, which is sample assignment 1.docx, which tells me that was a Microsoft Word file. I can simply click on that or click on the download icon. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate how I might actually do the annotation on this page. So to do this, all I need to do is click on that comment button, and that will toggle the annotation bar. And you'll notice here, when I click on that, I now see the second row. The second row shows me 5 of these different options, and the first one that shows up by default is this comment box. So what I can do is I can also click on the down arrow next to this comment box to see what's available. I can provide a point comment. I can click here, and I might need to zoom out here for a second actually, just so you can see this. I can provide that point comment, and I can say please spell your name correctly. And as I'm typing this, you can see that before or after the fact, I can also delete this comment. This is not a one-time deal. You can delete these later. Even after you've already graded the student, if for some reason you made a mistake, you can go back and save these comments. I did want to point out that one of my own personal feature requests that is not yet available in this inline grading feature is that you cannot actually save these comments. For me, I find it useful if I wanted to save a certain set of comments that I find that I want to add more than one. So if, let's say, 5 of my students all have spelling errors, rather than simply typing, "you have a spelling error 5 times, I would really love the idea of having to save a bank of those comments. But that's not currently available. That will hopefully be available in a future update to the service pack. But that is something that is coming in case you are wondering about saving comments. But for now, you can simply add those comments here on the inline grading viewer. So I can also provide an area comment. I can simply hover over one of these areas and simply provide an area and say, well, maybe you need to change your heading. So you can notice now that this is all, there's 3 different options here for providing an actual comment. I can also provide a text comment as well. I can simply place my cursor anywhere and let me just, like on an actual piece of text, and highlight that and say, what do you mean by this? So this allows me to highlight a piece of text as well as provide a comment in the margin. So this first comment area, this first comment tool allows me to go in and actually provide annotations in the margins. This is what you would see as similar to Microsoft track changes in comments. So you'll see these in the actual margins. Now, if you wanted to provide some actual freehand drawings, you can go under the next option here in the toolbar, which is the draw. I can provide black, red, blue, or even green drawings. So I might go in and say, well, I'm going to go ahead and draw this and say, click that, and you'll notice too that after you're done, it will ask you whether you want to complete this or cancel. This is just confirming that that's the drawing that you want. Sometimes you might screw up. Sometimes if you do, you can hit cancel, but I'm going to be happy with this and say complete. And you know, I might point out that there's something wrong with that. I might, you know, maybe use a different color, and so I'm happy with that. And then I can also, as I mentioned before, I can click on highlight if I want to highlight text. This is specifically for text. So we have text in the document. I might click the color first. Maybe I might want to use green and highlight a piece of text in the document. And as I remember, this is it renders the text. It is not just, it's not simply an image file. It does render the text as actual text. So I can go in, scroll down a little bit here, and maybe I might want to provide a different color for a different area of my document. And let's say here that this is, I'm going to make this as orange. And I can also, as I mentioned too, I can go in and provide text by clicking that text box. I can say, maybe you should add a new paragraph here. And maybe also, as I mentioned before, there's a strikeout. Maybe if I didn't like a certain piece of text, I can highlight what I want, and automatically, as I release my mouse, it will automatically strike it out. I can change the color of that, and you'll notice here there's a blinking cursor. I can provide a comment about this. I can say, this sentence is in passive voice, please correct. And I can also change the font of that as well. So you can see here there's quite a bit of options. I'm sure that, you know, one of the things that I was very pleased about this is the fact that this really cuts down on the amount of time. If you're someone that actually does online submissions for your students, this really does cut down on the workflow because you can do everything here in line. Now, once I'm done here, I can zoom out if I want to take a look at certain things. But then once I'm ready to provide a grade, you'll notice here on this in the second pane, I can go in and provide a grade as well as any comments. You might be wondering, well, what's the difference between this first grade area here and this darker gray as well as this attempt? This I found was confusing for me at first, and I found that this dark shaded area is if the student submitted more than once, it will show an attempt, if there was one, the previous attempts, it will show any grade that you might have provided. However, if you are going to enter a grade, it's going to want you to put it here in the second area. So I would say that this person received a 90. So I just want to point out again, the difference between these two areas is this first grade section is if there was a previous attempt. You can take a look at that, but you can't actually provide any grades. To provide a grade on the current attempt that you're looking at right now, you want to do this in the second box. I'm not really sure why, sometimes that might be confusing, but I've trained myself to understand that that's just the way it works for right now. But still, to me, it is fairly clear, but for some it may be a little confusing. I could also go in here and provide any extra grading notes that's only viewable just to me if I wanted to, but in this case, I don't have anything I want to show. I will say I want to provide some grader feedback, and this is what students will see. I will say, great work on this assignment. However, you had some issues with sentence and paragraph level phrasing. And if I did want to provide anything else, I could provide attachment here with these icons. I can also expand the grader feedback if I wanted to provide some HTML text. If for some reason I was one of those people that wanted to provide more specific feedback, I could open that. But otherwise, I'm fine with the way it is. I'm just going to hit submit. So what I've done here already is I provided my annotations, I've provided my grade, and any feedback. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and hit submit. So that was a lot of talking, but you'll notice that as you're doing this yourself, if you tried doing this, this is fairly quick. So you'll notice then that the grade was submitted, and for student side, I can go in back to my student view. So give it a second here. I know that I'm going to switch browsers again. You'll notice I'm going to go back into the student side. And as a student, I'm interested in saying, okay, well, I want to see my grades now. So I'm going to go as a student in my grades. And this could be changed if you change it to something else, but generally it's my grades. And you'll notice here that the grading does look a little bit different for the students, but there is a section here. This was the one that as a faculty member I just graded. This was the website analysis. So I can go in and see, oh wow, I got a 90 out of 100. But I want to see exactly what my professor put in my paper. So I can simply go in and actually click on the website analysis, and as a student, I see the exact same markings that I provided as a faculty member, but I do not have the ability to remove them. It's simply static and embedded within the file. So I can go in and say, oh, okay, this is what he said. I see that there's some highlighted information here. This is the comments that my professor provided for me, and there's my original submission. I could scroll up and down to see if there was anything else, but I didn't provide anything else. And the powerful feature that I also mentioned before is if I wanted to save this as a student, I can go up here to the inline viewer, and both faculty and students have access to this button. I can click on that down arrow next to the zoom in, zoom out icon. Click on that down arrow, and it will ask me, do I want to download it as a document, which would be the original document, or the annotated PDF. Now, if you download it as a document, this is the same way as if you downloaded it as the original file. Both of these will give you the same original submission with no annotations. But if you want to see the PDF with the actual annotations, which is 9 times out of 10 what you would want to do, you would click the second option. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and just show you real quick what it looks like. I'm going to save this as a download here and open it in my Adobe Acrobat viewer. And you'll notice that it renders this very nicely. If you use Adobe Acrobat Reader, the same annotations that I provided, it basically converts it into the Adobe PDF version. So it is very, very similar to what you see here. And it's just a wonderful feature to be able to take this document as a student and save this to your hard drive. As a faculty member, you can save samples of your student work. And remember, as a faculty member, you can, even though you already provided these marks, you can go back to each student and delete these marks, change the marks. It's not permanent. For the students, though, it is permanent. Students obviously do not have the ability to change that. It is only the faculty ability to be able to do that. So everything here is just, I'm able to save this PDF file. So I'm going to close this and just go back again to the faculty members view. So as I mentioned too, you can also access the same workflow in a different area too. So we're in the needs grading area because generally, I do teach here as an adjunct here at NIU. So one of the things that I find when I teach on a semester basis is that usually I always find myself using the needs grading area. But you can also go into the regular full grade center as well. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and since my menu here, the left-hand side is collapsed, I'm going to go hover over my menu and bring that back into full view. We were in the needs grading area. Let me click on that real quick. And since I already graded that one student, I have one left. But rather than viewing this here, I'm actually going to view this in the full grade center. So I'm going to go not into the needs grading. I'm going to go into the full grade center. This is where most of us probably go to view any of the assignments. So you'll notice right now that I have where was my Steve Jobs? There was my Steve Jobs. And I had given him a 90 on this particular submission, but there is also another submission too that seemed to have been submitted by someone else. So if I wanted to go in and actually view one of the other submissions based on what I've seen, I can go there and do it within the actual full grade center. So let me go see if there's anything else. It looks like there is a book review that Steve Jobs also submitted. That's the same thing that showed up in the needs grading area. So I'm going to go in and say, okay, wow, I see now that there is a exclamation mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and in the cell corresponding to that, I'm going to go in the drop-down arrow and click on the attempt. And this attempt was made today on 5/10/2013. And if I click on that, it takes me to the exact same area that I see now. So just so you know that what I'm seeing currently is exactly what I'm going to be seeing in the needs grading area. So it's the exact same thing that I'm seeing at the same time with the needs grading. So I can go here and provide the exact same comments if I wanted to and hit submit. The purpose of this was just to show everyone that you can access this grading workflow either in the needs grading or in the full grade center as well. And as a review, since we do have some time here left, in case you do have, for instance, a long list of students with work to be graded, you can always go into the grade column corresponding to that work and click on the down arrow at the very top, and it would be the fifth option down. It will be the assignment file download. You could simply do the traditional way and bulk download all of the files. The only issue with that is you obviously don't get the luxury of working with the inline grading workflow. But that is in case if you want to just download it, all the files. This might be good if you wanted to simply have an archive of all of their work. Even if you were going to use the grading workflow, it's nice to be able to do that and have a copy of that. It looks like I have some questions here as well. Brian, you were asking about the rubric section. If you wanted to experiment with the rubric, all you would have to do is in the here on the left-hand menu, there is a course tools area. If you click on the course tools, there is a section down here where it says rubrics, and I can click on that rubric. And you'll notice that I have 3 rubrics that I created for this sample class, so that would be in there. And all I would need to do is simply attach it to that assignment. So it's actually 12:45 right now. I do have we're very well on time, so I can show a quick demonstration of how I might attach this and how it would show. So if I wanted to incorporate this interactive rubric, I can say, let's pretend I'm going to use this blog. So this grading rubric is for a blog, but we're going to pretend it's for an assignment. I'm going to double check and make sure that this is the rubric that I want. Yes, it is. I'm going to X out of here real quick and go into my assessments area, wherever the assignment was located. So let's say I use the website analysis as an example. I'm going to go in here, and with making sure edit mode is on, I'm going to highlight over the website analysis link, click the download area next to it, and just edit it as if I was going to edit the assignment itself. And in the number 3 section of the grading area, I can see that there's an associated rubrics. Here's where I'm going to go ahead and attach that rubric. I'm going to select one, not create one because I already have one. I'm going to select the rubric, and I'm going to choose that rubric that I had already showed everyone. I'm going to click on that radio checkbox, hit submit, And I'm going to say, yes, I want whatever the maximum points of the rubric, and change that to that. It looks like the rubric was actually out of 25 points, so it's changing the value to 25, but I'm actually going to put it back to 100 since I already had a student submission there. And I'm just going to change some things here. And scroll all the way back down and click on Submit. So what happens then is if you did associate a rubric with this assignment, the grading workflow gives you now the option to not only provide a numerical grade and feedback, but also to click and score using the rubric. So to do that, I can go into the Full Grade Center and just show an example of what that might be like. So I did that for the website analysis assignments. I'm going to go back to that website analysis, and we'll go into this Golda Meir. Let me take a look at her attempt. This was one that I previously did. You'll notice that if I wanted to now, this was something I did previously. This was actually the submission I used in my screenshot for my slides. You'll notice that when you view a previously graded and marked up assignment, one of the things that I also forgot to mention was there's a history of all the comments and markups that you've made, and it shows up as a third pane here in the middle between the viewer and the assignment details. But I don't really want to worry too much about this for right now. What I did want to show you is that if I, for some reason, wanted to regrade this or grade it with a rubric, you'll notice that here in this attempt section, if you remember, I mentioned that you can provide grading notes, but now right next to it there is a rubric button. This will only be here if the rubric was associated, and that's what I did do after Brian asked about this. I can click on that rubric, and it will allow me to point, click, and score. So I could click, maybe this person met the requirements, timeliness was okay, and it would change the score, and I could hit save, and it would change it to 92 based on the point values. But that's how I would grade with a associated rubric combined with the grading workflow. But this is, but Brian, that's a great question. So that's how you would associate a rubric. Again, if you want to export a rubric, it is in the course tools section. And if you want to learn more about creating it more in depth, we do have an archive and a quick guide on that as well. But that is about it. So I can go ahead and resubmit that if I wanted to. Let me just double check here. Yes, Sandra, let me just take a look. Sandra, yes, you did ask, did you say we could see several drafts? Yes, if you allowed an assignment to be submitted more than once, you will be able to see the last graded attempt here on the upper right-hand corner of this assignment details, and you can grade that, you can override the grades, you can see the different attempts. There will be a separate section here for that. So yes, you can see several drafts. However, if you only allow the assignment to be submitted once, it would not therefore allow the students to submit more than once, and therefore they could only submit once, and you would only see just the one draft. Remember, if you want to tweak that setting, you simply go into edit the assignment and allow for multiple submissions, or specify the number of submissions that you would like to allow. In my classes, I usually allow up to 2 submissions, because usually the first assignment is a screw up, and the students will always email me and say, oh, can I go ahead and submit it again? I'll allow them a second attempt. So that just alleviates me from having to, relieves me from having to manually do it myself. And then Steve asked, comment boxes on the PDF covered up some of the original submission. Can the comment boxes be hidden so all the original can be seen? Yes, let me take a look at that again. If I downloaded this submission, let me just download this again. And if I open that up, it depends on your version. Yes. So if you use Adobe Acrobat Reader, the free version, you can collapse it. I didn't show the whole thing. If I expanded this, if you notice here, one of the features of Adobe is it converts the notes to their version, which I believe is called sticky notes. I believe you can just simply click on the boxes, and it would just minimize those. And you would just go back to there, and I believe there's a section here where you can go back and click on that corresponding object, and it would bring back the comment. So you'll notice here I hover over there, it shows that again, or I can hide it. So yes, you can definitely collapse those. I'm also a Mac user, and if you are using a Mac and you use the default PDF viewer, which is typically called Preview, The comments, I believe, do show up as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I would double check on that as well too. So depending on your choice of a PDF viewer, the comments might show up differently and might show up in a certain way depending on which software you do use. Those are all very good questions. Very good questions. So we are now here at 12:50, and gosh, we are 10 minutes ahead of time here. So before I go back into the rest of my presentations, anyone have any questions or anything that they would like me to show them while I'm still app sharing? Anything related to the grading flow or anything like that? If not, just if something comes up between now and when we're done, just feel free to let me know, and I'd be happy to go ahead and try to show that again. So what I'm going to do is go back and stop sharing this now. All right. So as I mentioned, now that we're kind of here more towards the end, before I even discuss this more information, if you do have, as I mentioned before, if you do have any questions about the grading workflow or the assignment grading, even after this presentation, feel free to contact me. I'll have so I have heard from some of you and do know some of you quite well, so you do have my contact information. But for those, I'll provide my email. So if you do have any questions beyond this point, do let me know. I do provide training on Blackboard, instructional technologies. And if there's questions I can't answer, I'd be happy to refer you to another colleague of mine or anyone else on my staff. As I did mention, as shown on the screen, this feature will be available as part of our new Service Pack upgrade to Service Pack 10.11. It's the same Blackboard, it's just a minor update with a lot of new features, essentially. So if you would like to learn a little bit more about the upgrade, I did push out the link to that here in the chat box, so you can click on that, view that anytime you'd like. And we will have more information there as well. And the outage, once the outage occurs, you'll be able to see Blackboard then with the new features, and we will be able to use the grading workflow at that time. And as I mentioned, since I am recording this session, I will make this available towards the end of the day today or after tomorrow in case you are interested or would like to learn a little bit more or review this or pass it on to any colleagues that haven't been able to attend with us today. And then also, as I mentioned too, if you are interested in looking at the other archives, as I did say, I do have one on rubrics, so there is also a link to that. I did deliver it earlier this year. It should be in the 2013 section, and you can view that as well. And there's also a link to a quick guide on how to create those. So at this point, if we have any questions, what I'm going to do now is go towards the last page here. And I'm also pushing out the survey. So before you go, again, as we do in all of our online workshops, I hope you might be able to just spend a few moments of your time filling out that survey for today's session. Like I always mention, we are always trying to improve our workshops, and we do especially appreciate any feedback on our workshops, just like we do with our face-to-face ones. And the survey is in that chat area, and if you could, I do kindly ask that you try to complete that within 5 days. And as I mentioned too, my contact information is available here on this page in case you do have any questions. And with that, it's been a great crowd today too. We were expecting a little bit over 10, but it was nice to be able to at least join the ones that were able to make with us today. I do hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about this brand new grading feature, and I do trust that you'll probably be very eager to explore it once it does become available next month in June. I will stick around here, but I'll go ahead and stop that recording. So again, thank you very much for attending today, and I hope you all enjoy your weekend.